Good day, everyone. For today's lesson, I am going to discuss to you about the leading coefficient test. Welcome to another exciting topic on polynomial functions. This lesson is a prerequisite to the next lesson, which is the graphing of polynomial functions. So in this lesson, you are expected to identify the leading term, its leading coefficient, and the degree of polynomial functions. Determine the end behavior of the graph of polynomial functions using the leading coefficient test. So in order to get you ready in this lesson, okay, so let's do the activity. It is about the concepts of polynomial function which you have learned in the previous module. Okay, so we have here a table. In the first column of our table are the polynomial functions. Then let's identify the leading term, the leading coefficient, and the degree. Okay, so number one, we have y equals 3x raised to 4 minus 8x cubed plus 8x minus 6. So the leading term here is 3x raised to 4. And the leading coefficient is 3. And the degree is 4. Okay, the next polynomial is y equals negative x raised to 4 plus 16x plus 2. So the leading term is negative x raised to 4. The leading coefficient is negative 1. And the degree is 4. Then, the next polynomial function, we have y equals x cubed minus 4x squared plus x plus 6. So here, the leading term is x cubed. The leading coefficient is 1. And the degree is 3. Okay. In the next polynomial function, we have y equals negative 2x raised to 5 plus x cubed minus 7x squared plus 4. The leading term is negative 2x raised to 5. And the leading coefficient is negative 2. And the degree is 5. Okay, so let's proceed now to the next slide. Okay, so let's observe the graphs given below and let's answer what is asked for each item. We have the leading term, which is a sub n times x raised to n, where a sub n is not equal to 0. Then the leading coefficient, which is a sub n greater than 0, so that is positive. Then if a sub n is less than 0, that is negative. So the leading coefficient can be positive or negative. Then we have the degree. It can be even or odd. So we have a polynomial function y equals x cubed minus 7x plus 6. So let's identify the leading term, which is x cubed. Then the leading coefficient is 1, which is positive. Then the degree is 3, which is odd. Okay, so therefore, the leading coefficient here is positive and the degree is odd. And the graph of our polynomial functions look like this. Yan. So observe the graph below. As you observe, the graph rises to the right and falls to the left. Okay? So if the leading coefficient is positive and the degree is odd, so it rises to the right and falls to the left. Okay, and for letter B, we have the polynomial function y equals negative 3x cubed minus 2x squared plus 8x. So let's identify the leading term, the leading coefficient, and the degree. So the leading term here is negative 3x cubed. And the leading coefficient is negative 3. So that is negative. That is negative. And the degree here is 3, which is odd. The degree is odd. So therefore, the graph of our polynomial function looks like this. So since the leading coefficient is negative and the degree is odd, so it rises to the left and falls to the right. So as you observe through our graph, it rises to the left. It rises to the left and falls to the right. Okay, so let's proceed now to letter C. We have the polynomial function y equals x raised to 4 minus 3x squared minus 3. So here the leading the leading term is x raised to 4 and the leading coefficient is 1, which is positive. Then the degree is even. Even yung ating degree dito, that is a 4. So the graph of our polynomial functions looks like this. So it rises to the left and it rises to the right. Okay, so since the leading coefficient is positive and the degree is even, it rises to the left and rises to the right. Now let's proceed to letter D. We have the polynomial function y equals negative 3x squared minus 6x plus 4. Okay, so the leading term here is negative 3x squared. Then the leading coefficient is negative 3. So that is negative. Then the degree is even. Okay, so therefore the graph of our polynomial function here looks like this. Ayan. So since ang ating leading coefficient ay negative, then ang ating degree ay even, so the possible sketch of our graph, it falls to the left and falls to the right. Negative yung ating leading coefficient and the degree is even. So falls to the left and falls to the right. So that is the graph of our polynomial function. So, okay, so in letter E, we have the polynomial functions f of x equals x cubed plus 4. The leading term is x cubed. Then the leading coefficient is 1, which is positive. And the degree here is odd. Okay, so since the leading coefficient is positive and the degree is odd, so the graph looks like this. Okay, so ito yung ating possible sketch ng ating graph. So it rises to the right and falls to the left. So ito yung possible sketch ng ating graph sa letter E dito sa ating polynomial function. So the activity that you have just answered will lead you to the new topic, which is the leading coefficient test. So let's start by reviewing the definition of a polynomial function that you have learned in the previous topic. So we have here so the leading coefficient test. This test can help you determine the end behavior of the graph of polynomial functions by looking at the degree of the leading coefficient so that it will give you a rough sketch of the graph. So a polynomial function is a function of the form f of x equals a sub n times x raised to n plus a sub n minus 1 times x raised to n minus 1 plus and so on plus a sub 1 x plus a sub 0. Okay, so where a sub n are real numbers called coefficients and n is a positive integer, and a sub n times x raised to n is the leading term, and a sub n is the leading coefficient, a sub 0 is the constant term, and a sub n is not equal to 0. Okay, so the end behavior of the end behavior is a description of the values of the function as x approaches positive infinity or negative infinity. The leading coefficient and the degree of a polynomial function determine its end behavior, and it is very much helpful in graphing polynomial function. Okay, so we have here the polynomial end behavior. So we have the leading coefficient, the degree, the graph comparison, and the end behavior. So positive, that is a greater than 0. Then if the degree is even, so the graph looks like this. Ayan. Kapag positive siya and even. So yung kanyang end behavior, the graph rises to the right and rises to the left. Okay, kapag positive, even. Rises to the right and rises to the left. Then kapag negative naman siya, that is a less than 0, then the degree is even, negative yan. So the graph looks like this. Ayan. The graph falls to the right and falls to the left. As you can see to the graph comparison. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, dito naman kapag yung ating leading coefficient is positive and the degree is odd, so the graph comparison looks like this. Ayan. So the graph rises to the right and falls to the left. Then if the leading coefficient is negative and the degree is odd, then the graph comparison looks like this. And the graph rises to the left and falls to the right. Ayan, tandaan ninyo yung ating end behavior. Nakadepende yan sa ating leading coefficient at saka degree. Kung ano yung ating end behavior. Ayan. Okay, so here are the examples of the 4 cases of the leading coefficient test. Okay, so letter A on the positive leading coefficient and even degree. So we have f of x equals 2x raised to 4 minus 3x cubed plus x minus 1. So right here, class, the leading term, so abbreviate na lang natin sa LT, leading term, is 2x raised to 4. And the leading coefficient, or LC, is 2, which is positive. And the degree is even. So therefore, class, since the leading coefficient is positive and the degree is even, so the end behavior of our graph here is it rises to the left and rises to the right. So the graph looks like this. Ayan. So since, class, the degree is 4, so hindi lang isa yung ating curve dito. So it rises to the left and rises to the right. Okay? So therefore, the graph looks like this. Okay? So since yung ating dulo is negative 1, so dadaan yan dito sa negative 1. Sa example, dito yung ating negative 1. Dadaan yung ating graph dyan. So hindi lang tayo mayroong isang curve, kundi meron tayong dalawang curve dito. Okay? So since the exponent is 4. So we have, now let's proceed to letter. Okay, so in letter B, we have on the negative leading coefficient and even degree, we have the polynomial function f of x equals negative 3x squared minus 6x plus 4. So the leading term here is, or the LT is negative 3x squared. Then the leading coefficient, or the LC, is negative 3, which is negative. And the degree is, okay, the degree here is even. Okay, negative even. So the end behavior here is it falls to the left and falls to the right. So iisa lang yung ating turning point dito. Kasi 2 lang naman yung ating degree. So the graph looks like this. Dadaan siya class sa positive 4. Sa ating y na positive 4. So since positive 4 yung dulo mo dito, so dadaan yan dito sa, example, dito yung 4 mo. Dadaan dyan yung ating graph. Okay? So it falls to the left and falls to the right since negative yung ating leading coefficient. Ayan. Falls to the left and falls to the right. So that is the graph of our polynomial function in letter B. Now in letter C, on the positive leading coefficient and odd degree, so we have f of x equals x cubed plus 5. So right here, the leading term is x cubed. Then the leading coefficient is 1, which is positive. Then the degree is odd. Okay, so since the leading coefficient is positive and the degree is odd, so the end behavior of our polynomial function here is it rises to the right and falls to the left. Okay? Then dadaan siya class sa positive 5 dito sa ating y-axis. Ayan. So, it rises to the right. Example, dito yung ating 5. So, it rises to the right and falls to the left. Okay, so magiging ganito siya. Ayan, so ganyan yung possible sketch ng ating graph sa letter C. Okay, so let's proceed now to letter D. On the negative leading coefficient and odd degree. So we have f of x equals negative x raised to 5 plus x raised to 4 minus 2x cubed plus 1. Okay, so right here, the leading term is negative x raised to 5 and the leading coefficient is negative 1 and that is negative. Then the degree here is odd. Okay, the degree is odd. Okay, so the possible graph of our polynomial function here is, looks like this. Okay, so the possible graph is, looks like this class. The end behavior is, it rises to the left and falls to the right. Then dadaan siya sa positive 1 dito. So, ganyan yung possible sketch ng ating graph sa letter D. So, were you able to understand the concept of the leading coefficient test? So, do you want more? So, try to do this activity. Determine the end behavior of the graph of each polynomial function. Show your answer by filling in the blanks and show the possible sketch of the graph. The first one is made for you. A 1-point check is given in each blank. Sketching the graph would earn 3 points. Okay, so we have letter A, y equals negative x raised to 4 plus 10x squared minus 9. So it's already been answered. Yan yung kanyang possible sketch ng kanyang graph. Okay? So gayahin nyo lang yung letter A. So ganyan ang inyong gagawin dito sa letter B. Then, after ng letter B, identify whether the function graph has positive or negative leading coefficient. So identify mo lang, positive ba or negative leading coefficient, each number. Then, in order to gain more mastery, complete the table below. And kompletuhin nyo yung ating table. Then, okay, so that's it for this day. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.